I'm trying to challenge perceptions of what nature actually is, because nature is really biased by society. I spend, again, a disproportionate amount of my time flipping over logs for beetles.
Yeah, I feel like you've come to the right place with people talking about poo. That's all voters talk about.
Yeah.
These woodlice have become asexual and then overthrown the woodlice patriarchy. Do you want to see a cockchafer?
Hello and welcome back to Connect to Nature. I'm Katrina Ridley. This week I have been enjoying some early morning sunrises. That's been nice.
Oh, lovely. And I'm Amy Chapman. And whether you've been watching on a commute, listening on a walk, or from your garden bench, we're glad you're here to reconnect with us this week. How have you been connecting to nature this week, Katrina?
Besides the sunrises, on top of that, I have been enjoying my local park. And I've basically discovered that my cat is obsessed with feathers.
Cute.
So every time I go for a walk in the park, there's like loads of geese and stuff. I'm like searching for a little feather to bring back for her. And yeah, it's funny. She's got this like scratch post. Now there's all these bird feathers stuck in her scratch post and she looks like a chief.
So cool.
So like park walks are totally different now.
Have you found any good ones?
I found a parakeet feather this week and it was very small, but it's like bright greeny blue. I was like, that's pride of place. But how about you? How have you?
Sounds beautiful. So on the roof of my boat, I've been growing a couple of flowers, and from writing a book, I've got a book called Dopamine Gardening, and one of the projects in there is pressing your own flowers and making a flower press. So I've still got the press from writing the book. So I decided to collect a couple of flowers from the roof and press them so that I've got like a memory of the first flowers I grew on the boat and something to look at when there aren't any flowers in the winter.
I do have to say as well, the book is very cute.
Thank you.
On my coffee table.
Love that. So this week we've got Connor Butler in, who is an ecologist and entomologist, aka a bug guy. And I recently saw Connor at a talk that he did on queer ecology, which was just like the coolest, most mind-blowing thing.
Mm-hmm. What you've been banging on about him to me for
I'm
ages.
obsessed.
This is your ultimate fangirl moment.
Yeah, I just can't wait to dig into it. So let's have a little chat with Connor.
Hello, I'm Connor the Ecologist and welcome to The Woods. Now I'm an entomologist, which is someone that studies invertebrates, insects, and my niche specialism is in beetles, and I have a big love for dung beetles.
Well, Connor, thank you so much for joining us today in our lovely green studio.
It's amazing. I feel for people that are listening on podcasts and not seeing it visually. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, energetically, maybe the plants will help. So yeah, we like to do a little quick fire to get our guests, in the zone and get to know them.
It's just a little this or that. We want your instinctive reaction to the questions. Don't think too hard about them.
Cool, hit me.
Cool, quick fire, let's go. Okay, would you rather watch butterflies or listen to crickets?
Listen to crickets.
Live inside a hollow log or in an underground burrow?
Log 100%.
Discover a new insect or rename an existing one?
Discover a new insect.
Really thought you were going to talk about cockchafers. Always have a frog on your shoulder or a mouse at your heel?
Frog.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
Shrink to insect size for a day or have insects grow to human size for an hour?
Insects to human size. That'd be
Ooh.
insane.
Have a spider politely wave at you daily or a beetle follow you everywhere like a pet dog?
I would have a pet beetle. That sounds sick.
Have insects constantly narrate your life or critique your outfit choices?
I am not a fashionista, so I'd rather the first one. I do not want the hate and judgment of insects.
Wow.
This episode of Connect to Nature is sponsored by Fairtrade. If you care about nature, climate change, and where your food comes from, here's something worth thinking about. The people growing many of the products we rely on every day, from coffee and chocolate to tea and bananas, are already facing some of the worst impacts of climate change. Extreme heat, flooding, and crop failures are making it harder for farming communities to earn a living, despite contributing the least to the climate crisis.
Yeah, Fairtrade's Do It Fair campaign is calling for a future that is fair on the planet, where businesses are held accountable for their environmental impact. And the people growing our food get the support they need to adapt and thrive.
You can help by choosing fair trade products and adding your voice to Fairtrade's petition calling for stronger laws to protect people and the planet. Find out more and sign the Fair on the Planet petition at fairtrade.org.uk. And together we can help build a future that's fair to people and fair to the planet.
I'm going to throw Amy immediately under the bus. And the whole time she was like, I just want to say cockchafers in this episode. I was like, I didn't think it'd be that soon.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's not often you get to say that on a podcast, so.
Whip it out. Let's all do it. Yeah. Not.
Sorry, just I'm going to use that quote, Connor, whip out the cockchafers.
Yeah, whip out the
This is
cockchafers.
perfect.
Have you got any with you?
I do. You want to see my cockchafer?
Are we getting this up now? Okay, we can get this out now. Yeah, go.
Do you want to see a cockchafer?
Yes, I'd love to see
This early in an
your
episode.
cockchafer.
Normally there's some build-up, some sort of...
Yeah.
No. Amy's not messing around. She's gone straight in.
So I brought some bugs with me today.
Wow.
This is a cockchafer.
Wow.
So for anyone who is listening and can't see the bugs, can you describe what the cockchafer actually looks like?
So they're beetles. They've got this really hard exoskeleton. They've got a bit of a pointy bit at the back of their body, which they use for reproduction. And they've got these really nice flappy kind of ears. They're the antennae, basically, but they kind of look like flappy dog ears. They're amazing beetles. Often they're called May bugs or June bugs, depending on when they emerge. And often people get annoyed at them because they can swarm around tall structures. And if you're the tallest thing in a big field, then often they can swarm around you and fly into your hair and all these things. But they're really amazing beetles. They lay their eggs in grassland and sometimes lawns, and their larvae live underground. But they're fantastic bugs. I've only ever seen one or two in real life, so they're not something that's super common based on where I'm living. But I'm envious of people that do see them more often. I will pass you it on here maybe, and you can have a little look.
That box is very like Jumanji. Do you know, I feel like I'm too.
cool.
It's a box that is stolen from the Oxford Natural History Museum.
Do they know?
They were fine with letting go. They have a lot of old stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes they need to get rid of stuff, and
Can I touch
this
it?
looked cool, so I took it. Yes, please.
Just to describe for anyone listening, it's like pins into bugs into a very wooden box. Oh, and they're very hard.
Ooh.
Spend a lot of my time pinning insects, which is it's a weird hobby. In that when you love something, I love insects, you spend a lot of time killing insects and curating them and pinning them and spreading them out all nice. And there's very few hobbies that you have to kill the thing that you love to do said hobby.
How do you like decide what's okay to kill and not? And do you know what I mean? Like, what's the ethics with that?
So there are so many insects everywhere. Someone made an estimation that more insects would have been killed building the London Olympic Stadium than have ever been collected by scientists. So you could collect everything and it probably wouldn't have an impact on the population. Maybe the exception is some of the big moths and butterflies. They might be at slightly lower population levels, but generally most stuff, they're so abundant that you can take some, collect them, submit the records to science. So there's a value in doing it, is that we learn more about those species. But yeah, very desensitized to it.
I suppose we should get a brief overview about you and what you do for your work. Could you tell us?
Sure. So I am an ecologist, slightly more specifically an entomologist, which is the study of insects. Slightly more specifically, my niche interest is in beetles. So you could say I'm a coleopterist. That's the Latin for someone that studies beetles. And my kind of niche interest is in dung beetles, the beetles you find in poo. So I spend a lot of my time on my hands and knees sifting through animal poo for these tiny little beetles, which I think is quite fun. Yeah. Ever looked at dung beetles?
I've not, and this sounds like a really stupid thing to say, but in my head they're a very like exotic, far away thing. I suppose my only reference is, again, I just always go to films. You know, there's always like a beetle rolling a bit of poo.
Yeah. Very, very famous in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
They used to have this kind of like dung beetle god because they believed that like dung beetles rolling balls of dung across the desert. That was like how the sun moved across the sky. And so they had this like dung beetle god, which I think is pretty neat. But no, we have around 60 species of dung beetle in the UK. And my claim to fame is that I've found about 5 species of dung beetle right outside Buckingham Palace in some poo. So if you see me around parts of London squatting over and doing a bit of a sift, then you'll know what I'm doing.
Does the king know?
Yeah. Well, probably not. He could be, contributing to the population.
I feel like this is a letter that needs to be sent, yourself to the royal family.
Do you know you
Let
have
them
dung
know.
beetles?
Yeah, just letting you know in your front garden,
Yeah.
actually. And I guess, I wanted to know more about your background of, firstly, when did nature first make you really feel something? And then again, in terms of dung beetles, when did you fall in love with them specifically?
So I've always been very outdoorsy. I grew up in like the countryside.
He's a country bumpkin.
Yeah, although like the countryside is so barren. We think about, often the countryside is like used interchangeably with nature, but actually a lot of arable countryside is quite barren. But I don't think I really connected with nature until much later on, because if you grow up watching TV and David Attenborough, Steve Owen, it's all about nature that's overseas, right? Which is kind of what you said, like everything is overseas. You don't get a sense of how much nature the UK has. And so I don't think I really was connected or interested in that. All I wanted to do was go overseas and find cool stuff. And so I studied biology. I did some really cool research out in Peru. I was really into like crocodiles and snakes and reptiles for a long time. And then during my undergraduate degree, this lady came into university called Christine Taylor, and she worked at this local natural history collection in Winchester. And she needed some volunteers to come and like catalog and type up labels from some of the insect specimens. And I was like, yeah, I've got a bit of spare time, I'll go. And so I went to this old kind of stuffy museum in this old kind of farm it was. And the first day she sat me down at the table and she was like, hey, I'll get some stuff for you to type up. And she put this drawer of insects in front of me, and it was a drawer of stag beetles. And I'd never seen stag beetles at that point. Have you seen stag beetles?
Yeah, in my are they the ones that you try and avoid when you think my mum, I think, told me like they get stuck in your hair?
They're quite big and they fly in the summer. Yeah.
Have they got like little horn things?
Yeah, the males got these big like antlers almost, which is where the name comes from. The males then, fight each other like deer do. It's quite impressive. May is a good time to find that, and they need rotting wood. So if you find a dead tree or something in May, June, should be okay. But it was the first time I'd seen these beetles, and it just like blew my mind. One, because they're quite big. They're kind of about 2 inches and a bit long, so they're quite formidable insects. And seeing this whole tray of them all kind of pinned out nice and neat. And all beetles are generally all the same size. You don't get baby beetles or, adult beetles. If you see a beetle, that is always the fully grown adult, because they have metamorphosis like a caterpillar and a butterfly. You don't see baby butterflies, you just see the adult butterfly that pops out of the cocoon, right?
I did not think about that until just now. I was like, wow.
Not all insects do that. Some of them are like us, and they have these nymphs, and they change. Grasshoppers have little baby nymphs, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But beetles are always the full size. And seeing them all laid out, they're almost like these like perfectly formed like Hot Wheels cars almost. That's how I kind of used to think of it. They're so perfect, and all their little wheels. They don't have wheels, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And seeing them up close as well is very different when you see them in the wild, because people are often scared they're going to jump in their face, they're going to fly into their hair. But seeing them, like, they're dead. You're like, okay, like you can really get up close and look at them. And it kind of just blew my mind. And since then, I was just obsessed by insects.
Yeah, they're so cool. I guess like seeing them dead as well is definitely a lot less scary. But I know a lot of people do fear insects.
Yeah.
Where do you think the fear comes from, and do you have any like ways that you can make people feel more comfortable with insects?
Yeah, so I do lots of guided walks around the UK, just try and connect people with nature. Sometimes it's with kids, sometimes it's with adults. You could take me to the most like barren place in London, paving slabs, and I'll find some cool wildlife, could be wood lice, it could be, anything. I try and give people those experiences because fear and that kind of feeling of disgust that people have is often a learned behavior, and it's like an experience that causes that. So this one time I was working with families, and I was just stopping random families in Hyde Park and asking them if they wanted to come on a bug hunt with me. And there was this young girl with her mum, and I was like, oh, come look under some logs with me. So we flipped over, as you do. We flipped over, if you see a random person in
Random
Hyde
bloke
Park,
in the park.
like,
Do you want to flip some logs?
So yes, this girl came and we flipped over a log, massive worm. I was like, do you want to hold the worm? And she was like, yeah, okay. So I put the worm in her hand and I was telling her, which end is the head, which is the tail. And mum at this point is like distracted, looking at her phone, has no idea kind of what's going on. Turns and sees her daughter holding this worm and screams.
Oh no.
And this girl then like obviously drops the worm, screams herself, and kind of runs to her mum for like, a bit of comfort. And I was like, that is the moment that fear is cemented in that girl's mind forever, that that's something that's scary, that it should have a reaction that is, fearful. And so a lot of people have that. And a lot of the fears we have are from our parents, they're from our upbringing, they're from our grown-ups, they're from experiences we have as a kid. And the best way to get over it is just exposure. It's trying to have a positive experience with, if it's a worm or if it's a slug or if it's something else. And the more you do it, the more it gets easier. I'm a bit scared of spiders. I don't know if you live on a boat, I imagine you must have some spooky spiders.
Well, not yet.
Touch wood.
But I'm a gardener,
Okay.
so I have to be around bugs a lot. And I used to be terrified of like most bugs. But starting by like wearing gloves in the garden, I was like, okay, my hands are safe. I can like dig around in the soil. Nothing's going to happen. And then gradually through exposure, I've just become okay with most things. So it works.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like a common experience is when you're younger, being obsessed with bugs and things like that, and then we grow out of it. And, why do you think that is?
I mean, part of it's school.
Yeah.
I used to be obsessed with nature, be outside, and then everyone goes to a stage where it kind of becomes uncool. Yeah. And then later on, I guess, sometimes you can find that again. But generally, like kids, when they are very young, they're very malleable. Yeah. And they will touch bugs. You put a woodlouse in the hand, they'll happily hold it. But when they get older, they pick up these kind of biases from their surroundings that influence the way they think they should feel about bugs. But it all just is complete exposure. Yeah. And actually, I think gardeners is interesting because we all have what's called like a disgust sensitivity, where we all have different levels of disgust, and you can do some fun quizzes to work out how disgusted you are. And there is research out there that shows that gardeners often have a lower disgust sensitivity than other people because they're connected to dirt and rot. And there is research that shows that can give them a higher sense of biophilia, kind of that appreciation for nature and invertebrates. So in a world where we are so disconnected from nature, and people often have a higher disgust sensitivity because we're not getting our hands dirty, gardening is a good way of kind of breaking that barrier down and becoming more integrated with bugs. And because it's not in your house often, it's in your garden, that makes it easier, because often when it's in your house, it feels like it's an invasion, like an infestation, and that elicits a different response in people than it is if you experience a spider outside.
I do think as a gardener, I've realised like the things that a lot of people think of as disgusting, like worms or like food rotting, then are the things that do the important work. So like worms make amazing soil that grows our food. Is there anything you wish people knew about a certain insect that they might think is gross, but actually does really important work?
Yeah, I mean, slugs are like a prime candidate. And let me give you my hot take on this. Firstly, there's no such thing as a slug. How would you
mic drop?
How would you define a slug?
In my head, it was its own sort of like genre. I literally don't know.
So you could say it's like a terrestrial gastropod without a shell. So it's kind of like a
That's what I was
snail
going to say.
without a
Yeah.
shell.
Obviously.
But what's interesting about slugs is that that's not one evolutionary split. There's not slugs and snails. Lots of families of snails have independently lost their shells and become slugs, which means that some slugs are more closely related to snails than they are to other types of slugs, which is cool. And you also, in the wintertime especially, if you turn over a log, you get shelled slugs, which are slugs that have this like pinky fingernail of shell on their back. It looks a bit like a little clam shell almost. So it still has this kind of vestigial shell. And you also then get semi-slugs, which are technically snails, but they still have a bit of a shell, but they can't kind of crawl into that shell. So it's not like a genetic split between slugs and snails. It's more like a sense of vibe, like how much shell have they like lost? And they're like, well, at what point do they become slugs, and at what point are they still like snails? It's a real confusing like thing, and it keeps me awake at night.
Yeah.
The big questions of the world is, when does it become a slug?
Yeah. First it was chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
it's like slug or the snail.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Yeah, I feel like semi-slug is my spirit animal.
Okay. Now, you've already touched on this a bit, I suppose, how society and upbringing has shaped our views of nature. But I know a term you mention a lot is queer ecology. So can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so for the last sort of 4 or so years, I've been doing lots of queer ecology walks around the UK. And the premise of queer ecology is, I'll use it more as a verb. So you can use queer in many different ways. As a noun, it's an umbrella term for people within the LGBTQ plus community. It used to be a slur, now has largely been reclaimed as a positive umbrella term. You could use queer as an adjective. If something is a bit queer, historically that was like a bit kind of, that's a bit queer. Unusual maybe. But to use it as a verb is kind of more what I do. So to queer something is to kind of break down the binaries, to challenge it. And that's kind of what I want to do with nature. I'm trying to challenge our perceptions of what nature actually is, because nature is really biased by society. And one of the good examples I like to give is to think about, I'll keep it on theme with insects, but to think about honeybees, for example. I do loads of tours all across the UK, and when I ask people what sex worker bees are, the majority of people will tell me that they're male. And if you get your information from reputable sources, such as the Bug's Life film or the Bee Movie, often, worker insects are portrayed as male because that fits the societal assumption of what workers are. Actually, they're females. The queen is female, the workers are female, and males are often only produced towards the end of the summer, and they don't contribute to the colony. They're essentially just flying bags of sperm. And you can take that wherever you want.
I can't wait to take all of these out of context.
And so we have these biases that affect how we see nature. And then we use that really biased view of nature to then inform what we think is normal or natural in humans. So it's this really like messy cycle, basically, where we're kind of using this biased view of nature to inform what is natural or normal in humans. And for many, many decades, queerness has been seen as something that is unnatural, and that's been used to justify so much of the oppression and the laws that have, affected queer people. So all I'm trying to do is show how diverse nature is, and hopefully people maybe take some comfort in themselves as being natural, normal, or maybe they've got a son or a daughter or a colleague that is also queer, and it helps to for them to think that they're also normal.
So you are so unapologetically yourself, and your energy is sort of infectious in that way as to how enthusiastic you are about such a niche part of nature. What would be your advice to someone listening, trying to build their confidence or stand in their own interest, especially if it's going against the grain, much as you are?
Embrace being a weirdo. Someone told me when I was young that you should be your subject. So be like bug boy or bug girl or, you know, wood lice boy, wood lice girl. And they said, like, be that thing, so that whenever someone thinks about that subject, they think of you. And so I haven't necessarily intentionally tried to do that, but I've kind of had that in the back of my mind to just embrace that thing, because it fills me with so much joy talking about insects and beetles. And actually, like, for me, it helps to manage that sense of kind of eco-anxiety as well, because the world is a scary place. But one of the things that drives me and allows me to keep going is this passion for trying to make people see the world as I see it and appreciate these little tiny creatures as I appreciate them. And so I can't imagine not being a weirdo. And I think the older you get, the more you stop caring about what other people think about you. And actually you realize that all the cool kids at school are actually quite lame nowadays. They're all so boring.
They're all hairdressers.
Yeah. Who wants to be boring? No, thank you.
And to finish up, I would love to know how you would recommend anyone who's listening to connect with nature or bugs. What's like a tiny thing they could do to find some bugs around them and be inspired this week?
Number one, flip a log. That is.
Do you have T-shirts saying that?
I should get merch.
There's some great puns somewhere in there. give us some minutes.
Yeah, I should really branch out.
Yeah, there we go.
Amazing.
So people often tell me there's no wildlife to be found in winter. There is. You just got to look in the right places, and one of the places you look is under logs. So I spend, again, a disproportionate amount of my time flipping over logs for beetles. That's generally where lots of beetles and wood lice live. You could be in a really barren park, but if there's a log in the corner, flip it over, that's where everything is going to be. And yeah, in the winter, you'll still find all the centipedes, the wood lice, everything under there. And then in midsummer, because it's so hot everywhere, everything is sheltering under that log as well. Even amphibians. So you'll find amphibians also under logs. They're kind of like the gift that is always giving. So that's my number one. My number two is to appreciate the tiny details in nature. And something I try and convey on all the walks that I do. I give everyone hand lenses. So these little tiny magnifying lenses here. And you can look at your kind of like fingertip. It's quite nice. And so I give everyone these on my walk, and we go and look at tiny little details. And it could be, you know, lichens and mosses. It's quite fantastic. And once you see that and you appreciate the little tiny details, you see them everywhere. And even if I'm waiting for a bus somewhere, you can guarantee there's going to be lichen or moss growing on a bus stop, on a lamppost. And if you can appreciate that, like, it will change your world.
Well, Connor, thank you for just being an excellent guest all round. I mean, you brought specimens.
I came prepared.
Yeah, we've got some great puns in there. But thank you so much for talking to us today. And maybe we'll come on one of your bug hunts soon.
Yeah.
Please do. Yeah, look at my website and come on one of my walks.
Well, besides the quotes about sperm and cockchafers, the thing that stood out for me is it's just so like magnetic hearing someone talk so enthusiastically about something so specific. And yeah, I just feel like I really admire, and I'm still curious about the personal journey he's been on, like standing in his own, like, I don't know, confidence and power. And I suppose as someone who's always felt like a bit of an outsider and a weirdo and a nerd, I'm like, yes, Connor.
Yeah, I just love like the sense of play that he has, and just the like idea to just go outside and turn over some logs and see what's underneath. I really love that and how achievable it is. And then the conversation we had about disgust as well is, I think, so important, and sort of the things that we project onto nature based on our own human biases. I think that's such a like big and important conversation that maybe we're not having enough.
If he doesn't write a book about that, I will be shocked. But that's actually it for this episode of Connect to Nature. We really hope it's inspired you to pause, look up, and just enjoy whatever nature is around you, just like us today.
Do let us know what resonated with you. Send us a message or tag us in your outdoorsy adventures, and we'll see you next week.